Guys, welcome back to another video. Today's video is going to be on a hot topic, how to beat Fire King. I have some windows up that you're going to see shortly on how the deck is constructed and what you need to really look out for when you're playing against this deck. I have 4 unique categories. I'm going to say this early because no one is talking about 2 categories that I think are important, in beating the Fire King strategy, right? Everyone's talking about board breakers and hand traps. And the ratio percentage of 70% engine to 30% hand traps or whatever non-engine you're talking about, which I agree with wholeheartedly. However, there's 2 categories that I think are pivotal into beating this deck. And this is just through my own experience. Recently I went to a regional, tested out my strategy, and it worked out well. I got my invite, and I was just 1 win away in my last round to top 8ing the event. So let's go ahead and talk about these categories, right? So you got board breakers, which is your Super Poly, your Dark Ruler, Forbidden Droplet. You have Regeki and Lightning Storm. All great cards, phenomenal cards. Do they do much against Fire King though? Super Poly does, but if you're playing against a good player, they can play around it. They might make a suboptimal board, but that makes your hand suboptimal because now you have a brick in your hand, which is Super Poly. Super Poly inherently is also a card that you have to discard a card for, which can help you or hurt you. It really depends on what deck you're playing and what follow-up they may have, right? So board breakers is one category. And the other well-known category is hand traps. Obviously, you got your Ash, Joel, Bell, Effect Veiler, Nibiru, Gamma, Epsilon, Delta. That was showcased in the UDS that recently just happened. So hand traps are another way of stopping the deck, right? Fire King deck. And we'll touch base a little bit more in depth on when you would want to and what options you have available to you when you're playing against Fire King. Because as Jesse Cotton said in his recent video, it is a theory behind it, right? You have to expect them to have everything available to them, all their resources available to them, because you simply do not know. So let's go into the other 2 categories that are not talked about at all. I think they really should be more talked about, just because it is another way of breaking, your opponent's field or board or hand, or beating their strategy is the best way to put it. Right. So let's talk about first the unique category. This unique category encompasses cards that are meta specific that can act both as a hand trap and as a board breaker. My first example is Cosmic Cyclone. Cosmic Cyclone can go ahead and blow out their Fire King field spell, which will wipe their board, right? But that doesn't really mean that you're out of the woods yet, right? Because there's graveyard effects that will trigger. Also, you have your cards like Triple Tactics Thrust and Triple Tactics Talent. Thrust is more to access your whole deck, what resources you can use, and you can either search for a hand trap, or not a hand trap. Well, technically, and for infinite impermanence you can search for, and talents you can search for. But those cards right there, Talent and Thrust, really can diversify how you're going to play around your opponent's board. So that's why I put it in the unique category, because it's not necessarily a board breaker or a hand trap. And Triple Tactics Talent acts as both a board breaker and a hand trap, and can also provide you with that additional value, maybe drawing 2 cards if you need it at the time. Right? So let me explain that a little bit. Right? Triple Tactics Talent says take 1 monster. That's the board breaking aspect. Another part of it says look at your opponent's hand and rip a card. Right? That's another. That's a hand trap for sure. Right? And then you have your draw 2, which is a unique factor to the card. That's why I put it in this category. Phenomenal card. I'm sure maybe one day down the future it's gonna get hit. But in a meta like this, where effects are happening all the time in the main phase, it's a staple in my opinion. All right, the last category, and I think one of the biggest categories to beating this deck, Fire King. No one is talking about this category. I have no idea why, but it's graveyard breakers, right? We have board breakers, but what about your graveyard breakers, right? Let me name a few. You have your Foolish Return. You have your Called by the Grave, your Soul Release, your Different Dimension Ground, your Silent Graveyard. These are all cards. You have Necro Valley. That could be a floodgate. You have all these cards that shut down the graveyard. And I think that's the real key to beat in this deck, Fire King, right? So, I don't know why no one's talking about this category, but I think it's necessary to have something in your side, or to prepare for something like, how do you fight against layered interruptions? Layered interruptions are mainly layered from your hand or graveyard. In Fire King, it's mostly the graveyard, right? Your princess comes out, pops a card, you're gonna bring back another card. Your Amber Well, when it's in the graveyard, when something's destroyed, you destroy a card on your opponent's field. These are all graveyard effects happening. You understand? So cards like Different Dimension Ground and all of that can really help facilitate how you're going to beat the Fire King strategy. And no one's talking about it. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about it here. Let's first talk about how a Fire King deck is set up, right? So let's go ahead and switch over. This deck, so you have some context, is from the 3v3 YCS. And it's the first one that I can see here in top 4. It's a Fire King variant with Diabell Star, Snake Eyes, of course. The winners don't have any of their decks posted, but it looks like pure Snake Eye variants. So they might have something that they're keeping under wraps right now. However, Snake Eyes involve the graveyard. We all know that. So let's go ahead and take a look at this deck and see what they have available, right, to their resources. You have the Kieran to dodge your hand traps like Effect Veiler, Infinite Permanence. They have Arvata. This is their Fire King package right here. 6 cards. You have the Ash, the Populace, 1 Flamberge here, 3 Diabell Star. You can see the deck here. It looks like this person opted to go with 12 hand traps plus 3 triple tactic silent. But let's talk about their graveyard, which is more important in my opinion. Right, you have your your Amber Well here, an effect that activates in the graveyard. Right, this is a pivotal part of their combo. Everyone knows that. Zealantis is here. Zealantis is also pivotal to their strategy. However, it's only when they're going second, when they want to OTK you. Okay? This is not something that you want to worry about if they're going first. All right, let's talk about the next strategy, or next card, IP Masquerena. Right? This is coming back from the graveyard. It is being spell and trap zoned by Flamberge, most likely from their graveyard. All right? Hida targets a card in your graveyard, special summon it, and typically after they go Hida, they go into Princess. Princess is a card all reliant with that within the graveyard, right? If you special summon a monster, you could pop a card on your field, a fire monster, and a monster that your opponent controls, special summon this card. And once this card is special summoned, you can special summon one fire monster from their graveyard. All right, this is a part of the OTK strategy. We all know that. Sunlight Wolf is a card that if something is special summoned to a link zone that it points to, add a card from the graveyard. I mean, these are all graveyard reliant, the extra deck for sure. And that's how their power exists, because they're layered interruptions from the graveyard using extra deck monsters. Okay. Let's talk about the main deck. Another effect that activates in the graveyard is Garunix. Everyone knows Garunix by now, right? Another effect that activates in the graveyard, Ponix adds from the graveyard to the hand if it's destroyed. Most likely in the combo, they're not going to destroy this card. They're just going to use it as a body. However, it is there as an option. Kieran effect. Guess where that activates when it's destroyed? In the graveyard. All right. And let's see. Popular activates when it's in the graveyard. Right. Let's read it. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can target 1 fire monster in your graveyard, place it in its owner's spell and trap zone. Flamberge. Where does this card activate? Let's see. If this card is sent from the hand or field to the graveyard, you can special summon 2 level 1 fire monsters from your graveyard. I'm seeing a common theme here. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but the common theme is graveyard, man. You have to have graveyard breakers to beat this deck. Not saying that, you have to main deck these cards, but put it in your side deck, right? That's where you have the ability to go ahead and manipulate your deck to better suit you in a matchup versus Fire King. If you're going first, great. Like, these cards can be set. These cards can be, in your hand, ready to go if needed, depending on the card. But you want to be able to reliantly shut down the graveyard. Okay? Now, let's go ahead and move on, right? I think I made my point here that this deck is really graveyard dependent. And if your deck is also graveyard dependent, then you might have a little bit of an issue for this. So what I'm going to show you now is, let's touch a little bit on their side deck quickly because I want to bring up some points here. Anti-spell Fragrance is good against, you can put obviously it's a floodgate, but you need that going first, and it's good against certain decks. When it comes to Fire King, you can kind of bite yourself in the rear playing this card. Also, other decks bite themselves in the rear going first with this card. So I do like the card. However, I think it can end up working against you. I think it really. So I don't know if I would put it. I mean, obviously these are pros. They know what they're doing. They can play around it. But as you can see, they have Cosmic Cyclone in here in the unique category, and that's to blow up other people's Fire King Island. They have the Codebine here, which is a graveyard killer. They have the Board Breakers. There's a little bit of a mixture of everything in here. And they have another card, Bell, which also shuts down the graveyard, but it's a hand trap. Okay. Alright. So I'm going to show you a little bit more about my deck and my composition. And hopefully this video has already inspired some of you to look at the graveyard as an option of focus when you're playing against Fire King. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the deck that I have. It's going to be a little unique. So I play, personally, Voiceless Voice in person, right? So when I'm playing this deck, the only thing I think about when I'm playing this deck is how can I get my Omni Negate up, and how can I stop Fire King from playing their game, right? Fire King likes to special summon, and they like to go into their graveyard. So this is not necessarily my side deck in real life. However, I do play this game online, so let's look at my ratios. I have, I maxed out a lot of the, I play the Voiceless Voice engine. You can't really cut down on the engine too much. I think the ratios that I have here is good. The main deck is clearly 42 cards. But the most unique part about my deck is I play 2s. I don't play 3-ofs for the hand traps. This is for general coverage, right? Because you have 3 Nibiru, 2 Effect Veiler, 2 Nibiru, 2 Effect Veiler, 2 Ash, 2 Infinite Impermanence, and 2 of the unique category Triple Tactics Talent. The reason why I cut them down to 2 is because I find more value in a separate engine. I have 2 engines in here, 2 engines in this deck, as you can tell, and that's the branded package. I play the branded, 1 Fallen of Albaz, and 1 Jalgan the Spiritualist. Listen, the reason why I think this is the way to go for my deck specifically is because if I open Branded Fusion and set up my Sanctifier Dragon with the Albaz and the Jalgan, if Fire King cannot special summon monsters, they lose the game. It's an automatic win. Okay? That's if I get lucky enough to win the die roll. That's all things considered, right? Ceteris Paribus. If I can resolve this effect, then I win the game. Secondly, Branded Fusion is also a major target for Ash Blossom. I want them to Ash. If they have Ash, I want them to Ash to Branded Fusion. That way I can feel like my adding to my deck to my hand is safe. And this deck can play around Droll. These are all things that go through my head when I'm playing against an opponent. Okay? As you can tell here, I also play only 2 Pot of Prosperity. One that's restraint from deck construction. I don't want to go over 42 at all. It just makes it more inconsistent. However, the other reason why I play 2 is because I don't want a Pot of Prosperity and see another Pot of Prosperity in my Prosperity. Does that make sense? That is something that, really you don't want to happen. Okay. The reason why I chose these hand traps is obviously Ash Blossom is general coverage. You don't really want to play this against Fire King, so I often side it out against them, depending on if I'm going first or second. If I'm going second, I put Drolls in, I put everything in, Bells, and I'll explain why in a second. But just generally, this is good against every deck, right? 2 Nids, you don't want to open up 2. 2 Effect Veiler, 2 Ash, 2 Infinite Impermanence, 2 Triple Tactics Talent. The reason why I decided on these ratios is 1, you can't activate Triple Tactics Talent, Ash, and Nibiru twice in 1 turn. Okay, so if you draw multiple, if you're running 3 of each, right, and you draw multiple, you effectively have 1 card that is reliant on you having another turn. Not in this format. Not in this format. There's OTKs going around everywhere. Okay? Effect Veiler, Infinite Impermanence, you can activate more than one in one turn. I would have no issue. If I had the space, I would play these at 3, obviously. And my main reason for not playing Joel and Lockbird is because if I have the option to play Infinite Impermanence, a card that is a hand trap that plays around Triple Tactics Talent, because that's a major factor of this format, I'm going to opt for that option. In addition to that, Fire King can play under Joel. They don't need Joel and Lockbird. I mean, if they get Joel and Lockbird, they don't care. Okay, so that's why I cite it for decks that do care about it. Like Fluwandereeze, Dark World, I played a Dark World. Cards that it can really impact. Okay, so I put that in the side option. And I know this might look weird, all these 2s, but it's because I play this other package, the 5-card engine of Fallen of Albaz, which automatically wins me a game. I'm going to say against every single deck except for Fluwandereeze, because they normal summon. So the 5-card engine, in my opinion, is worth the percentage decrease of seeing those hand traps, if that makes sense. Okay? You have plenty of extra deck space. I can manipulate this at any point. I don't need to play all of these cards. Funny story, I went to the regional with 13 cards in my extra deck because I didn't have specific cards. Like, I didn't have an Chaos Angel at the time, and I didn't have an Excel Synchron Stardust Dragon. I did get them now, but... Okay, and shortly, let's talk about the extra deck. I mean, the side deck. Strike, phenomenal card. I'm sure you've seen it in the UDS. If you stop the Ash, you're good. You stop the Ash and remove a body, right? That's what you want to do. So, that also going first, Summon Limit. Man, I won so many games with Summon Limit, it's incredible. It's incredible. You can play mind games with it too. So, like, if they go Snake Eye Ash, add Poplar effect, special summon, and then they do their link or whatever they want to do, you can Summon Limit on the 3rd summon, right? They're trying to read you just as much as you're trying to read them. It's a game of chess, really, when it comes to Yu-Gi-Oh! At the end of the day. One of my matches, they went Snake Eye Ash into Poplar. They got Poplar, and they wanted to go a little bit of a step further. They went ahead and activated Snake Eye. What is this card called? Sinful Spoils from their hand to try and go ahead and summon another one. So they sent Poplar. Right? I just went ahead and summoned them. The card fizzles. Poplar can spell and trap zone itself, but Ash cannot bring out anything with its effect because they're under summon limit. It was game. I won in that game. Okay? I run 2 anti-spell because I know it can hurt me as much as it can hurt my opponent. Okay? So if I'm playing the anti-spell, I'm taking out this package because it won't help me. Bell is really good. Cosmic is really good. I'm going to slide in more cards to shut down the graveyard. So let's look at a card like Silent Graveyard. This card says, right? Discard 1 card. Effects that activate in the graveyard this turn are negated. With Voiceless Voice, you don't need to activate anything in the graveyard, right? You have your Saphira that does activate in graveyard if you need it to. And you also have your Low that activates in graveyard. Your Trias that activates in graveyard. So, if you're going to play around, if you're siding in this card, Silent Graveyard, you would try to get your Low into your hand, and you will find a way to ritual summon the Guardian without using effects that activate in the graveyard, like Saphira. You don't need Saphira to fusion summon all the time. You have cards like Pre-Prep, right? You have Pot of Prosperity. You can hard draw it. You can add it with the barrier. You can literally add the ritual spell with the barrier that is set or placed by Low. So Silent Graveyard is a card that I'm gonna put in, and I'm really thinking about just cutting anti-spell for it. It's also quick play. The one downside is you have to discard a card. But I guarantee you, no one's thinking about this card in this format. No one. I'm just gonna stick with the 2 theme when it comes to Bell. but I definitely want 3 sign graveyard. Effects that activate in the graveyard this turn are negated. Okay? They can activate, but they're negated. Now let's look at the Fire King deck again. What activates in graveyard? Kieran does. Garunix does. Flamebridge does. Let's see, what else activates in graveyard here? Poplar does. Ambloil does. Princess does. And yeah, so it shuts down the Princess, it shuts down the Ambloil, which is their main choke points and interruptions, and it shuts down literally their whole Fire King engine for the most part, and their Flamebridge, which is a very strong card. Poplar and Flamebridge, it shuts them all down, bro. It just does. Okay. So I'm gonna be testing this card. I think it's gonna be great. So yeah, I don't want to go too much in depth into this video. If you guys want a follow-up video where I break down phase by phase what you can expect, I could do that quickly just here, but not as in depth as I would like to. Right? Draw phase. The Fire King deck can activate Wanted to get Black Witch. So what do you want to do there? Do you want to droll there? Or sorry, you can't droll there. Do you want to ash that, or do you want to wait a little bit further to see where you can ash something else? Right? Nothing really happens in the standby phase unless Ponix is coming back. In the main phase, there's 3 main things that Fire King wants to start off with. Fire King Snake Eye. It's either Bonfire, Black Witch, or Snake Eye Ash. They could Poplar as well, but that's I believe that's suboptimal for them. They wouldn't want to do that. And then off of those 3 choices, and I guess I can add the 4th one, where do you want to interact? So that will be my following video if you find value in this one, and if you stay till the end. So yeah, just let me know down low in the comments if you want to see a more in-depth breakdown on when you should interact. I think introducing you to the category of unique category and graveyard breakers in general, and the value that adds against the deck that you're playing against, really is a testament of maybe some value. Okay? Appreciate you guys checking in, man. I'll catch you on the next one. Peace out.